start the last session of our today's one-day conference. Well, my name is Tenzin Legman, Nalanda Course Coordinator at Tibet House. So our last session is a panel discussion on sharing the experience of the conference on challenging emotions in today's world, mechanism, challenges, and solution. And for this, Professor Kaveri Gill will be chairing the session, and we have other 9 panelists who are Miss Aditi Kaushik, Miss Tenzin Soki, Miss Arya Malik, Miss Tenzin Udon, Miss Simran Mili, Miss Dicky, Miss Conga Dechin, Miss Bhavya Bhardwaj, Miss Mansi. I would like to request our chairperson and all the participants to please come on the dais and take your respective seats. Thank you. Before I proceed, I would like to share a brief introduction of our chairperson for this session. Professor Kaveri Gill is a non-resident senior fellow, Center of Excellence of Himalayan Studies, School of Humanities and Social Science, Shiv Nadar University, Delhi NCR. She's also a student of Nalanda Master's Course, first batch from Tibet House. So with this, I now request our chairperson to kindly take over the session. Thank you.
Good evening and Tashi Dele. So I think it's only the very brave amongst us left. And I think in all my years of academia, I have rarely seen the chief guest stay until the last session. So thank you, Mr. Haldar. So I want to begin by thanking Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdola, the director of Tibet House, and all the staff and organizers of this truly stupendous conference. I think it has been riveting. And as Mr. Haldar was telling me in the break that, because he found it so interesting with so many perspectives and disciplines included, out of his busy schedule, he has taken time out to stay here. I was really struck by, Dr. Hani Oberoi's comments on the Tibetan community. Over the years, I have had a similar observation as hers about, interacting particularly with youngsters in the Tibetan community and now for a decade, about how they have dealt with the question of collective trauma and individual trauma, which is the situation of Tibet. And I say this because when I was at Cambridge University, I had a very good friend who was an Israeli in the PhD room, and we could discuss about everything except Palestine and Israel. He said this topic made him extremely angry, and the Palestinians were all in collective depression because they felt they had no future. So when I contrast and compare what Dr. Hani Oberoi said today about, how she has experienced the Tibetan community and, of course, the role of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama in guiding his people, but also the philosophy of the middle way approach, that he embodies. I would really like to bring that up here because in both the panel and the audience, there are many younger Tibetans and others, and this is something that we can learn from them. It is something that I'm constantly, now I study, though, as a student, and I have been interested in Nalanda philosophy, but sometimes when I meet the younger people, I really feel that they are teaching me because most of their families are separated. They are far away from their parents. They don't have, support. And this is something today talking about praxis. At the end of the day, this is something very, very striking. And so, Venerable Geshe-la had suggestions for 2 further conferences, series 9 and 10, personally from this conference, that I think would be very interesting. Number 1 is the role of trauma, obstacles, and mental evolution. Because I think that in the philosophical perspective, and even Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness have said in their book that they would never know happiness if they hadn't gone through a lot of suffering and difficulties. And it would be interesting to see the different disciplinary perspectives on this. And the second thing that emerged today is this notion of self and other, how to conceive, engage, and what is the relationship there. Because I feel from different disciplines, there was a lot of different inputs coming in. So I'm just going to move to the panel, but I want to say one thing about this conference that was extremely striking and also end on a hopeful note. And that is that it seemed to me that both neuroscience and psychology, mainstream Western psychology, other psychology, Buddhist psychology, all kinds, they are basically, there is no determinism and there is free will. And this is what is emerging from cutting edge science in neuroscience, in psychology, in all areas. So I think there we can end on this note of hope. And, there seems to be certainly bidirectional relationship between the mind-body complex. And that is something that emerged very, very strongly here. The second thing, of course, here we have with us a panel of youngsters that I'm looking forward to hear from. As an academic, I've engaged a lot with younger people, and there's a kind of a dichotomy there. At one level, we say that, the young people have a lot of mental health issues, and it's true that it is going up. We see evidence of that on campuses across in the country and the world. And India itself has one of the highest rates of mental health issues, and it's growing very fast. But I would say the thing about the young is that there's idealism, there's open-mindedness, there's initiative. And in that sense, I also find that they are, the perfect cohort to look to the future. And of course, His Holiness's vision to also focus on this group, as was mentioned earlier, his Sea Learning Initiative and so many others. So with that, I'm really looking forward to this panel. If I request, I beg the indulgence, if all the panelists, if I can give you a short introduction rather than the extensive one, just in the interest of time. And timekeeping will not be mine. That is, you'll be getting a note. So 7 minutes per speaker. So today, then, our first speaker here is Miss Aditi Kaushik, who's a young psychologist who aims to work in the fields of neurodivergence and adolescent psychology upon graduation. She's currently a third-year student of applied psychology at Gargi College, University of Delhi. And Aditi's journey is marked by an interest in the perception of psychology in India. To this end, she has taken up courses from Yale and Harvard in her academic career. And this is something I want to mention, that the demand for psychology degrees is really increasing, and it's so heartening to see such an interest in this discipline. So over to you, Aditi. Whichever you.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Aditi Kaushik, and I'm an undergraduate student at Gargi College, and I'm studying applied psychology honors. Now, before anything else, I would like to extend my gratitude to the distinguished speakers, moderators, chairpersons, the organizers, and everyone who's made this conference possible. And I would like to thank Rizvi ma'am for giving me this opportunity to be here today. So thank you. Before registering for the conference, if you had asked me to define emotions, I'd have given you a very basic definition. These are reactions, these are responses to external stimuli, to experiences in our lives. And if you'd said, explain it a bit more, give it a bit more depth, I would have said, all right, emotions can be positive, they can be negative, or you can categorize them based on the depth. You can categorize them based on the magnitude. How deeply did you feel an emotion? How happy were you? How angry were you? How sad were you? But if you'd asked me questions further, if you'd asked me, what's more important, positive emotions or negative emotions? If you had asked me, why is it that sometimes we are able to feel emotions for long periods of time? Why is it that sometimes we feel an emotion and then maybe an hour later, we don't relate to that anymore? I wouldn't have been able to answer. However, this is my experience in learning in the conference, and I hope that now if I'm asked these questions, I'm able to answer them. And I will try and answer them right here, right now. So in the first session, we talked of eudaimonia and hedony. Eudaimonia is the kind of pleasant feelings and emotions that you experience as a consequence of self-growth, as a consequence of self-actualization, when you have some experience, when you found your purpose in life. And Hedonia, on the opposite hand, is temporary self-pleasures. It's temporary pleasures and temporary sensory experiences that you go through. Now, theoretically speaking, both of these together form two of the most important components of happiness. However, according to research, it is the order of priority. It is which of the two that you prioritize that will define the kind of happiness that you experience. So, the research stated that for those people who prioritize hedonic actions over eudaimonic actions, they were found to correlate with lower life satisfaction, with lower overall happiness, as opposed to those who prioritize eudaimonic actions. Now, the reason I chose this as the first example, as the first thing to share, is to show how this has been my experience throughout this conference from the very first session itself. How the questions and how the doubts I had about this concept of emotions have been slowly answered and clarified throughout the day. So, moving on to the next big question that I also had, what's more important? Positive emotions, negative emotions? What should we try and achieve? What should we work towards? So, in one of the talks, we talked of how positive emotions, how we portray ourselves in this world of social media, how we only try and speak of the positive aspects, of the positive things that are happening in our life, to the extent that we are willing to ignore, that we are willing to avoid all the other parts that make us us, just because they're not so good to look at, just because they're not as attractive to look at. Ironically, however, if you look at the research done on the effects of pursuing only positive effect, for example, there was a research done by Gruber and his colleagues in 2011. It was found that the participants who obsessively pursued happiness and positive emotions alone, they were the ones who reported higher traits of depression, higher traits of misery, and feelings of being unsatisfied in life. When you actually think about it, it's not surprising. If individuals are unable to identify with their own self, if they're unable to even accept the emotions of their own consciousness, much less talk of the emotions of their unconscious, how can we expect them to ever achieve an optimum state of psychological well-being? But then we talk about how positive emotions are what we should be aiming for, how we should only be going for positive aspects, for positive effect. But the thing is, it isn't as straightforward. It's not that positive emotions will always equal positive outcomes or that negative emotions will always equal negative outcomes. Sometimes positive emotions can lead to negative outcomes and negative emotions can lead to positive outcomes. Just as we discussed in one of the other sessions in the conference, negative emotions are necessary for survival. They're necessary for evolution. They're necessary for progress. Anger, jealousy, spite, pettiness. Can you imagine the amount of inventions that wouldn't exist if these emotions had remained suppressed and unacknowledged? I mean, to name a few: potato chips, the automatic telephone switching, the Lamborghini, and even the app Threads that has been released by Instagram. All of these inventions, the inventors found the idea for it, found the motivation to create these because of some incident that made them feel angry, that made them feel jealous. So it can't be said that, so we can't disregard the importance of negative emotions in our life. Similarly, not just in these big or in talks of progress, negative emotions are responsible for our everyday functioning as well. They offer a lot of cognitive benefits, such as Tamir and Bigman had identified in their research, rage is a significant cause of improved performance, specifically if you talk about a confrontational task. Imagine yourself in a race with someone you really dislike for a prize you really want. The difference in your performance there as opposed to somewhere else is going to be a huge difference. The thing is, in another session, we talked of the negative aspects of negative emotions. And this is one of the things that really stuck with me regarding this conference, because throughout the day, our perspectives have been challenged. We have been introduced to new concepts, new emotions, new opinions. So in that, when we take an example of rumination, where we repetitively focus on only our negative experiences, emotions, and aspects, we unknowingly alter our neural networks and reinforce our tendency towards negative thinking. So the thing is, seeing all of this, everything that we've learned today, everything that the speakers have spoken about, the knowledge that we've gained, how do we decide what is better? Negative emotions or positive emotions? How is this experience helping me and answer that question? For me, for the conclusion that I have come to, the realization that I have come to is that it isn't about positive or negative emotions. It is about positive and negative emotions. Since the early 2000s, researchers such as Larson and his colleagues have been insisting on how multiple emotions are experienced simultaneously, how we don't only experience one emotion at a time. It doesn't matter if we label them as positive or negative. Take the example of when we started college for the first time. We were happy, we were excited, we were nervous, we were sad about leaving home. Multiple emotions simultaneously. And the problem arises, the problem that we face is when we try to focus on only one sort or one type of emotion instead of acknowledging, understanding, and trying to process everything that we feel. There are various techniques that we discussed today. Techniques from Western psychology, from Indian psychology, from the Buddhist perspective. We talked of CBT, we talked of MCBT, we talked of RCBT, of mindfulness, yoga, meditation. We have so many options, so many schools of thoughts. The only thing that we need to do now is work on this to take that first step forward and decide that we want to acknowledge all of our emotions, regardless of whether they make us look good or not. Because only when we find that true balance between all of them will we be able to achieve optimum well being. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi. You've set the bar high in terms of timekeeping, and what a wonderful summary and a lot of thought for us. So the next speaker is Miss Tenzin Soki, in her fourth year undergraduate student pursuing a BSc in psychology at Ashoka University. She has a minor in media studies. And in addition to her studies, she serves as an undergraduate teaching assistant for the course Developmental Psychology at the university. Over to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm Tenzin Soki, and a fourth year undergrad student in Ashoka University. So before studying, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to organizer for organizing such an event, and it's my pleasure to be here. So I wanted to share my experience on the topic on three sections. First being my encounters with psychology as a discipline, and secondly, the insights that I've gained from the conference, and thirdly, I'm the question that I got from this conference. So, firstly, my encounters with psychology as a discipline started when my grandma termed her depression as unhappiness, in Tibetan Magipa, and a neighborhood son who is in 30s who is suffering from psychosis as mad Nyomba. So, but through the course of my learning and what I've studied in psychology as a discipline, I've learned that there are different disorders. There are numerous disorders. What are the comorbidity? What are the diagnosis criteria? What are DSM-5 criteria? What are ICD-10? I have learned all of this. But then the intervention part was not that, um, the intervention part hasn't influenced me yet. But today, attending this conference, I've gained quite a few of knowledge about like a lot of different perspective, be it Buddhist perspective, be it neuroscience perspective. So yeah, I'll just try to summarize in short my sessions, like the sessions and the insights that I've gained. So first, we have learned about the nature, not like nature versus nurture, but rather nature and nurture and how it interplays together. And then we have also learned about epigenetic principle, being that gene expression doesn't solely depends on the biological factor, but it also the environmental plays a crucial role in it. And gene can be silenced and the mutation can happen due to environmental factors. And then we have also gone through the ecological approach, how environment plays a crucial role in shaping these experiences. And then most importantly, as Professor mentioned, biopsychosocial model then rather than biological model or like sociological model. And in second session, I have learned about the rumination, which I personally have experienced a lot, but then I haven't got the right term to like phrase it. So I think I got that term today. And also the thing of putting everything in categories, right? Like in dichotomy, like negative emotion, positive emotion, and how it can't be in continuum. Also, I've learned how, like as Professor also mentioned, how negative emotion themselves, like the experience of negative emotion themselves, aren't harmful, like in that sense, aren't that of a concern, but rather a negative emotion are a social construct. So there is a social norm in attached to it. So that's why I learned how, I mean, not every emotion stays in like dichotomy, and it stays in continuum. Also definitely in group out group relation, and also how when approaching a problem we need to see from intersectionality approach, because everyone comes from different intersectional identities, and it's not that everyone can be put in like, let's say, nationality or like gender. So I think it's important to look from every approach. And yeah, in third solution session we learned about the solution, how it's not deterministic and how it's probabilistic, and also how brain is not reactive and how brain is predictive in nature. So actually we have learned through a lot of pharmacological and non-pharmacological intervention that we can do. But after all of this, the question that was bothering me was, how can we actually apply these interventions in our communities, right? So um, let me share an anecdote. So after my second year, I went to do an internship in Ladakh in SNM hospital, government hospital there. So there I went with a lot of enthusiasm, like I'll do this, I'll contribute to my community. But then what happened was, when I ended up like going there, it's not that easy to like impose intervention like therapy in like community such as Ladakh, which is highly intertwined with religion like Buddhism. So that's why the question that is in my mind is, how can we come up with like a holistic approach of religion and also um, therapy, like the Eurocentric approach? So how to get it together and then work together to basically as I said, the people come from different intersectional identities. So how to come and how to go about implementing different interventions in different communities. So I think that's the, if I can say, that's all the learning that I had in a few words. Yeah, all in all, I had a great learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sokila. And that what your question is, hopefully, if there's a future conference on self and other, including whether therapy as an intervention or smashing the idea of self altogether, that can be part of it. So, and excellent timekeeping again. Thank you. Our third speaker is Miss Arya Malik, who is a student pursuing her BA in Applied Psychology at Gargi College, University of Delhi. She's currently working as a research intern at the Brain Behavior Research Foundation of India, also in Delhi. Her research interests include human development, cognitive neuroscience, psycholinguistics, and diversity studies. Over to you, Arya.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you for this opportunity. So when I first read the conference booklet and saw those words, emotion, neuroscience, and psychology, I pretty much understood the psychology part very quickly, because that is the background I come from. I'm a psychology undergrad at Gargi College. In fact, I think there might be several of us young people who would be able to make the connection between emotions and psychology, or emotions and mind, rather quickly. While emotions and the brain, I'm not sure if that's a connection that most of us would make very easily or instantly, because when we're feeling an emotion, I don't think we're thinking like, if I see a very beautiful flower, I don't think, oh, I'm feeling so happy because there are neurons firing in my brain making me feel that way. We probably don't think that. So throughout the session, especially the papers on neuroscience, it was equal parts fascinating and bizarre to me that there are such complex neural mechanisms involved in how we experience and deal with emotions, mechanisms that we can't even see. So from the neuroscience perspective, I realized that neuroscientific literature has a lot to say about this very broad spectrum of emotions that humans are capable of feeling, as well as how these emotions might be a very interesting interplay of the mind and the brain. So thanks to advances in science, we know which parts of the brain are activated when we're happy, when we're sad. How is the brain of a depressed person so anatomically different from a person who isn't depressed? So throughout these sessions, what I realized was that so much of our emotional experience is reliant on these neural circuitries that are being created and dismantled as we engage in social interaction. And particularly, one session that really stayed with me was how the programming of the brain is influenced by the activities that we engage in society. It had a lot to do with the kind of work we do within our communities. There was the concept of Ubuntu, of humanity and interdependence. There was the concept of seeking eudaimonic experiences through looking at others beyond ourselves. And there was the concept of the experiences of teachers and how they struggle in ways we might not even know. So all I'm saying is that if we are seeking positivity, maybe one of the answers is in the community, in the way we interact with each other. And I hope that we lean so much on our teachers to get through every day of our lives. I hope they can lean on us too sometimes. Yeah. From the Buddhist perspective, I did not know a lot about Buddhist psychology or philosophy before today. But what I found very fascinating was how they conceptualized Vedana or feeling as something that originates in the mind, and how we are all born with these emotional aggregates, all of us, and how we all know that we want to be happy, that we don't want to suffer. That is something that is so innately ingrained in us. We just have to realize it. And there were a lot of empowering things. One of them was that if everything is a choice, everything is impermanent and we can change it. So we have the choice. What an empowering thing to know that we have the choice to change how we deal with our emotions, how we experience our emotions. And this really helped me connect it to that entire conversation on critical versus sensitive periods, how critical periods say that it is irreversible what happens in these 2 to 5 years, while as the sensitive periods say that there is always scope for improvement, that we have free will, like ma'am said, and we can always do what we want to do. Nothing is predetermined, right? Uh, from the psychology perspective, I'm a Jungian at heart, so the presentation on Jungian psychology was very fascinating, and the concept of shadows, as Carl Jung suggested, shadows that might be those things that we repress about ourselves, those lies we don't say, those cuss words we don't say, those crimes we don't commit. But at the same time, our shadow might also be that reservoir of creativity that we aren't able to tap into because of societal norms, because we're so obsessed with presenting this image of ourselves, this image that is perfect and beautiful and attractive to look at all times. So the idea of becoming whole, of giving up on this idea of perfection, because honestly it doesn't exist, is very empowering. And I think that is what reaching for positive emotions at the end of the day means, not seeing yourself as an image but as a work in progress, as something that is constantly evolving, something that has layers. From the Western psychology perspective, since we were talking about the positive psychology movement, I was reminded of how, when I have discussions with my peers in classrooms or research circles, we actually find it very difficult to talk about positivity for some reason. Uh, we don't really want to talk about it, at least not under the guise of positivity, because I think, I'm not sure if I can make such a statement, but from what I know, the movement of self care and well being has sort of been thrust into some of our faces. Like, you have to be positive, you have to, be optimistic at all times. And thanks to social media, every second person claims to be a well being guru. So, at least for people of my age, we don't want to talk about positivity or positive emotions. So, and we have a complicated relationship with emotions. It's difficult to categorize them into neat boxes of positive and negative, and things we don't want to, things we want to avoid. We want to sweep under the rug. So, positivity, yes, cannot be faked. This is what I learned. It cannot be forced. And some days are just bad days, and there's not much one can do about that than just accept it as it is. And to shun negative emotions altogether is also a big mistake. Negative emotions have evolutionary value. They've helped us survive for so long. There's research on how the amygdala of mothers' changes during postpartum and during pregnancy to be attuned to the needs of their children. If things like negative emotions can change the way our brain is structured, who are we to just dismiss them and shun them and say no negativity? So it's not that easy. So I think the thing I learned today was that instead of shunning negativity, maybe you need to face it. Maybe you need to bring it out and hold it in front of your face and just speak to it out loud and say, I'm feeling sad. And maybe just the action, the act of saying I am feeling sad might diminish the intensity of that sadness, is what I have learned. So I really thank the organizers of today's conference. I thank Tibet House. I thank all of the professionals and members of the audience who were present today, who brought this confluence of neuroscience and psychology and Buddhism together to understand how positivity or positive emotions are not a static thing that we should aim for. They're not a goal, but they're a state of being that we can always work upon in different ways. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arya. I think this panel is absolutely stupendous. And that's why young people have this energy and clarity. And, I think a collection of papers of this panel would be amazing. Our next speaker is Miss Tenzin Udon, who did her schooling from TCV Gopalpur. That's Tibetan Children's Village School, for those who do not know, Gopalpur, and has been a class representative, an active band member, and taken part in various social service schemes. And she's currently in her second year in psychology honors at Daulat Ram, Delhi University. Over to you, Udon.
Good evening, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank the Tibet House for giving me this opportunity. And for this session, today, please allow me to refer my notes because I'm not very good with communications. So today in this session, the Buddhist philosophy part was the one I enjoyed the most. For I've always kept my eyes on the Tibet House. I had always wanted to explore more of the Buddhist philosophy, especially applying it to the psychology. So, what today I want to talk about what I figured out from this session and what I have known. Right? Emotion, I think, is all about inferences we make. If you take each and everything from the negative attitude, you'll never escape from the anger, the vengeance, and the sadness. But in contrast, if you take things from the positive aspect, that's where you are living, right? Um, I think most of people believe that nothing is permanent. So emotions, I think, should be the first one to come as a temporary thing. Most of you are, I hope, aware of the Tibetan mandala, right? Which is made up of colored sand. Like it takes months and months to complete the art. So what we do is, like, after completing the art, we brush it off, like, because we interpret it as like nothing is permanent, right? So I have read this book recently by Gyalu Thunchup, the noodle maker of Kalimpong. He's the brother of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So in this book, he mentioned that though His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's close acquaintances were killed by the Chinese, he prayed for them, but everything was in control. Like, if it were us, we would be emotional damage, right? For I think for he had trained his mind, right? And I remember Mr. Abhijit Haldar ended his talk with nature gives you what you give them. And I relate it with the word from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. He said that treat people as how good you are, not as how bad they have been to you. It's all about compassion and peace, I think, like which everyone in this world desire, right? Though emotion might be temporary, but if you choose, you can always be positive and happy. So I would like to thank Tibet House again for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Udon. That's applied psychology, I would say, already there. Our next speaker is Miss Simran Mili, who's currently pursuing studies in the field of clinical psychology. She did her bachelor's and master's degree in psychology from the University of Delhi. She's well versed in the field of Indian psychology, clinical psychology, research methodology, cognitive science, neurosciences, health and culture, well-being, positive psychology, and many more. Over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, to whosoever is feeling sleepy right now. Okay. My name is Simran Mili, and I came to psychology with an aspiration to understand others. But the more I encounter with the subject, the more it compels me to understand myself first. Because without understanding our own nature, we cannot really understand what is going on with others. Here, previously, someone mentioned the difference between pain and suffering through the analogy of two arrows. The first arrow representing the physical pain, and the second arrow representing our own response towards it. We cannot really make the physical pain go away somehow, but what we can do is reducing the suffering which has psychological basis towards it. I feel that as a generation, we are the most privileged ones because of all the physical comfort that we have right now. But still, as we hear in the conference discuss about the increasing rate of psychological illness like depression, anxiety, information overload, less attention span, and these things actually pose as a challenge in today's world. But let's take this challenge as an opportunity rather than as a crisis. As the famous poet Rumi rightly said, that crack is where the light enters. And this crack is an opportunity to see that the problem is not really external, but something internal going on. And also, like, whenever through like we see a movie or a play, we are able to connect with the characters that are present there, whether they are feeling positive or negative emotion. We are able to relate with them and even enjoy those emotions in the process, whether they are feeling sad or happy. But the same situation happens in our real life. We don't enjoy the negative situation as much as we do in the movies. Why does it happen? Because at the end of the day, we know that it's a movie and it's going to end. And at the end of the day, we know that we are not those characters. I feel this attitude of impermanence and impersonal nature need to be followed in real life too. We need to know that the situations which create or lead to emotions are impermanent and will pass away with time. And also, we need to know that we are, although the characters experiencing in real life, but also detached to those situations. Also, it blew my mind how the ancient knowledge is able to discover the subtleties of human nature, especially the East, whether it's Buddhism, yoga, Ayurveda. And I guess this platform has provided that amalgamation of ancient knowledge with the combination of new scientific discovery, which is just heartfelt. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this platform to share my views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simran. Impermanence is coming up a lot. And of course, then the nature of ontological reality, if we engage, and the nature of self. And, perhaps in a future conference, focus on that part could also be very, very beneficial for, further discussion. Our next speaker is Miss Sarin Dicky, who's pursuing a BA in psychology honors and is in her second year at Jesus and Mary College. She says her incredible odyssey began in Tibet, but it was in India that she truly flourished. Her journey through education has transformed her, igniting a fire for academic excellence while nurturing her leadership, competitiveness, and self-assuredness. This panel is showing that it's amazing. She embraced extracurricular pursuits and donned many roles in the editorial team, school broadcasting committee, and student union. So over to you, Dicky.
Good evening to all. First, thank you so much for having me here. Okay. So for what I have experienced, emotion is something that arises within ourselves, which brings colors and meanings in our lives. I personally feel that emotions are necessary part of our life, which give us sense of like being alive, or it helps us to distinguish between the good and bad aspects. Like emotions can be broadly categorized into two positive emotions and negative emotions. Like positive emotions are generally arises due to the satisfactions what we have and what we have achieved, which ultimately give us sense of happiness. Just like that, negative emotions disappointment and unsatisfaction, which causes pain and sorrows. Challenging and negative emotions in the modern world brings forbidden difficulties, especially people living big cities like Delhi, due to the lack of self-reflection and excessive competitive sense, and also busy life, busy schedules. Uh, in this period or during that difficulty times, if if we don't have someone to share our problems, then they are easily targeted, that negative emotions, and it will cause the negative consequences like depression, anxiety, and negative anxiety, and also it also make self-hatred, and finally it causes these suicidal thoughts. So to navigate or to overcome these problems or difficulty times, I think self-focus is more important to overcome. like uh, we can do this by efforting mindfulness practice and meditations, yoga, and the one thing is sharing problems to others, which help a lot. And finally, the one way is getting to consultancy from the therapist or mental health professionals, which who can give us more information or strategies to overcome that problems. uh, Speaking of myself, I whenever I feel emotional or sadness, then I always try to avoid that emotions by listening music or reading his Holiness Dalai Lama's books, and also sharing my problems or with my friends. And uh, like one of the our speakers shared that just don't keep emotions. So I feel like keeping emotions is not good. So whether it is happy or it is sadness, just express our emotions, so it will be help more. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that sharing, and it's interesting, positive and negative emotions, to see this generation, also the pressures that you are under, which has come up in both in the presentation on imagery, social media, and of course where technology is going with AI and everything. So I'm also very fascinated by what is being taken away, and that has a generational aspect, which is amazing, and its own kind of knowledge. Our next speaker is Miss Conga Dechin, and she's in her sophomore year, embracing her skill as an editorial head from her psychology department in DRC. I'm guessing that's Daulat Ram College in Delhi University. And she also is indulging in off-campus participation of GTSU and the Cancer Society. So that must be the Students' Union.
If you deliberately plan on being less than you are capable of being, then I warn you that you will be unhappy for the rest of your life. A quote by Abraham Maslow. Okay, so I guess I'm the last one here. So
No, there are two more.
oh, I'm so sorry. Good evening, everyone. I guess few of my points might sound restricting to few of the speakers, but still, I really want to be excused. Challenging emotions in today's world, mechanism, challenges, and solution. It is an actual fact that humans are curious about themselves the most, and that is called selfhood. And to note, it is not selfishness. Like it is a self-awareness, and I consider it as a self-love. Like it is necessary for everyone, right? So that's why. Okay, so when asked about challenging emotions in today's world, or simply to give a viewpoint about challenging emotions in today's life, the first immediate word that I could highlight is emotion. The concept that I do detail is emotion in personal dimension of I, me, my state of emotion that are within oneself, which is internal and innate emotion. Among the social context, the external state with which you interact with the people, and the environment where you receive certain stimuli, which contributes in your attitude, perception, and behavior, and that is called cognitive product of oneself. In today's generation, I personally feel that the whole consequences, causes, and applications of emotions seem to target the youth. Like, is there anyone denying to that? I don't think so. Like earlier mentioned by our Keshe Thapkinda, he said that he used the word the sensitive period. Like in my understanding, I use that referring to the upcoming generation and the infant potential population. So when it comes to emotion, I think we should focus on them. Like already mentioned, we can uh, look for the good news, and like we can implement new strategies of developing a positive emotion through them. But when I highlight on youth population, I'm not denying the reality that every sentient being, including animals and human ourselves, are vulnerable and capable of expressing and feeling emotions that are both positive and negative. Anyways, coming back to the targeted subject of emotions to youth. Which category of the population commits most suicide? Who are active users of social medias and who are exposed to digital empowerment? The answer is on your tongue, the youth. And based on my observation, it occurs to me that every interaction and exposure to the social setting today is a bombardment of mixed information, and that is simply a clouded misconception which needs to be filtrated, because if not, I don't think an individual would be able to identify the emotion they are feeling. Like they might even mistake selfishness to happiness, jealousy to pride, and truth to ego. Okay, now talking to the main point. When thinking about overcoming the challenges of emotions, only two things come to my mind. The most available suggestion, that is C learning, social, emotion, and ethical learning. This used to be practiced in our school like every Saturday, and I feel that it is a really good intervention because we are focusing on the students. So, as mentioned, the sensitive category, which are the youth, I feel that it would be more effective in that way. And in the in the Indian context, I would highly recommend the ancient Indian principle of Ayurveda, specifically the Ayurveda diet and the lifestyle, which is significantly related to emotional well-being. When where balance of doshas and practice of Vedic practices are mentioned. And as mentioned by Dr. Ravindra Nagendra, he said that health and nutrition being the crucial part of regulation with health and nutrition are the crucial part for the regulation of emotion. And I believe that one who practices Ayurvedic regulation will at least have a neutral state of mind, less of negativity, and if not for the whole welcoming of the positive emotion, it would be neutral. Okay, so I wasn't supposed to mention this, but based on my experience, like in my social setting, there are junior mates, my own friends. They come up to me, like they approach me, and like they used to share their problems with me. But whenever I contact with them, I don't feel the necessity of showing my few practical works of psychology to them, because they already know that they are already aware of their emotion. They come to me saying that they are depressed, they are having stress. It's like there's no need to even consult, because I don't have to identify any emotion to them. They already know. And in the today's world, I feel that people already know, like they are really aware of their own emotion, but due to the bombardment of immense, like intense information, they are little puzzled. It's like you're expressing anxiety just because you have prior knowledge of how anxiety looks like. You express or react in the way because you are aware of it. And to me, it is like spotting few minor personality disorder, like when friend comes to me. But for the fact, I'm not judging anyone. It is just an experience, so that's why. Okay. Okay, now like I do have a question. Like I don't agree to this, but I hope if someone could answer, it would be really great. Like people express negative emotions like really quickly, right, in a very easy and reactive way. But positive emotions, like the healthy one is positive emotion, but we are more reactive to uh, expressing negative emotions. So I want this to be clarified. Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you, Dechin. I must say, so I hope that question is answered by our learned member sitting in the first row, still here with us. So patient, so kind. And also listening to you, I'm very glad I'm getting older. I'm very sorry, but we are going to leave you with all the technological problems, because with AI coming, I really empathize with the younger generation, honestly. It is a significant, like it requires its own kind of psychology, I think, dealing with social media and all of that and disinformation. So our next speaker is Bhavya Bhardwaj, and she is an aspiring psychologist who's currently pursuing her MA from Ambedkar University. And for her, psychology has always been more than just a field of study. It's a lifelong fascination. And she says, my journey in the field of mental health has been one of growth, not just academically, but as a compassionate human being. I firmly believe that psychology isn't just about understanding, it's about applying that understanding to help individuals thrive, heal, and lead fulfilling lives. I believe magic exists in the universe in the form of kindness and spreading smiles, she says. So over to you, Bhavya.
Okay, so hello everyone. Firstly, thank you for being there. And I would also like to extend my gratitude towards Tibet House for giving me this opportunity. And when we came in the morning, it was very unclear that me and my friend from Ambedkar University we will be presenting or not, but you made it happen. So thank you so much. And so, moving on, since morning, we have been listening to a lot of perspectives and a diverse group of experts. And there's been this underlying theme of positive and negative emotions and our tendency to suppress or express them. And I would build on the similar lines. So I would like to take this moment to talk about a very important topic, and it is important because as individuals, we have always encountered it or observed it, but still the term is not that familiar. And the term is emotional bypassing. So I don't know how many of you know what emotional bypassing actually is. And even Dr. Sabine Rizvi ma'am mentioned it in her talk when she said that the problem is not negative emotions. The problem is that we don't integrate them in our life. And I truly agree with that, ma'am, because I feel that when we judge emotions as positive or negative, we actually limit our way of experiencing or expressing, and we give way to emotional bypassing. And emotional bypassing is basically when you downplay, ignore, or avoid your challenging emotions. And why do you do that? It's basically because you want to behave in a socially acceptable manner, and it's very convenient to do so. And it manifests in a lot of ways. It is when you bottle up your emotions. It is also when you put on a mask that you're fine when you're actually not fine. And sometimes it's also when you guilt trip yourself for feeling a certain way. And in all of this, what it hampers your health and obviously your personality development. And while I was reading about this topic, one thing that I realized was that it's not something that's an individual response. It's actually a very conditioned response. And I'm quite sure that you guys have heard these statements that just go out there with a smile or put on a brave face or fake it until you make it. And I have problem with these statements because most of the time it becomes so habitual that we don't even realize we are doing it. And the problem is it's not our problem because we were not told different when we were not taught how to build healthier relationship with our emotions. And I do agree that emotional bypassing acts as a survival mechanism, as many of us have survived some really difficult and traumatic moments because of it, but then it just provides temporary relief to us. And painful emotions don't really go away on their own because it always stays buried up deep within us, and it brews until it boils, rises, and spills over and over again. And so many of the talks today actually touched upon consequences, and I wouldn't go on that journey. But while I was thinking about this topic, I was wondering what can be done to expand the space for feeling and understanding emotions in today's world. And so I realized that more than expressing, it's about acknowledging your own emotional experiences, because everything in our existence is intelligently designed and serves a purpose. Every feeling we experience is necessary for our growth and holds a unique treasure within. So, for example, when I'm feeling worthless, what's hidden in that is that I'm in the middle of building my self-worth. When I'm feeling fearful, I'm in the mid of becoming courageous. When I'm feeling sorrow, I'm in the mid of embodying compassion. And when I am feeling lost, I'm actually in the mid of waking up. So, this is something that I realized during the conference as well. And to conclude, we did touch upon the complexity of mind and brain, but one thing that we forgot is heart. And I think that until and unless heart and mind are not aligned together, one can't be emotionally resilient, and one can't fully express themselves and live in truest form of authenticity. And obviously, there are many insights and takeaways, but one of the takeaways that really stood out to me was that in challenging times, our ultimate goal should be to allow our emotions to run their course and not to suppress them, because we are gifted with range of emotions so as a navigating tools, and we should let them guide us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavya. I'm parroting myself, but I'm really struck by, the level of introspection of this panel, even as they were attending today's program. And one thing I want to comment, and in some ways, this generation, this amount of self-awareness and also the awareness about mental health issues that were not accessible in earlier generations. And I think that's a positive thing to come out of, a lot of what is going on and the new and added pressures that your generation would face. So I don't know if it's a panel of psychology students, but I think from my previous students, I also feel that in general, there's a lot more discussion and knowledge about this topic, which is very essential. So now we will turn to the last speaker of the day, who is Mansi. And she says, and I'm going to read her bio because in her words, that I am not a psychology graduate. And the reason it becomes important for me to mention it is because I left my well-paid job to study psychology, for I realized how important mental health actually is. Because I have experienced multiple fields, mechanical engineering, coding, corporate, and now psychology, I can also see how and in what ways mental health is being talked about or cared for across disciplines. So I am not just an enthusiast, but an active seeker of mental health. So over to you, Mansi.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry. Isn't it funny we are ending the conference with somebody who has no link to either neuroscience or psychology? I mean, okay. Good evening, everyone. Two things. First of all, congratulations. I'm the last presenter. So thank you for staying, actually. Whatever reasons you have for staying, I'll take your staying for me. So thank you so much. Second thing is, I'm going to wreck the presentation, sorry, the conference, because I have a lot of questions. Even though I agree with everything everybody said, I can only see ifs and buts. Okay. Okay. So one thing is, even though all of us had different perspectives, there is one thing we can all agree on. There is never only one reason for something, right? Whatever bad you are feeling, there is not only in the brain or it's not only in the mind. There are multiple factors contributing to it, right? And if I lean on the word biopsychosocial, we have social in that as well. And we are social beings and we are affected by society in general, right? And one thing which is very trending nowadays is hustle culture, right? You are hustling too hard. You cannot rest.
You have to explain a little bit what is hustle
yes.
culture, just one line,
Sure.
because it's not familiar to everybody.
Okay,
An
sure,
American slang, and yeah.
Hustle culture means you will need to hustle. And what hustle is, you need to be the best. And to be the best, it's not just you need to be best because you have good grades. You need to be best because you have good grades, you have a good resume, you are attending conferences, you have a good body, you have a good social media. You are hustling because you want to show that you are perfect. Okay. And it is glorified nowadays. Nowadays, if you are resting, that is called laziness. That is not rest, right? So even if I'll go back today from this conference, it's just one item of my list. We are now working on a to-do list. Okay, this is done. My resume has a conference now. Now I'm one of the best. Okay. So that is the problem. We are in a society that is promoting this hustle culture, right? And even if you will stand still, the world is constantly moving. The world will move you, with yourself, right? So actually, I was wondering, for emotional regulation, you need time. You cannot regulate your emotions if you don't have time to think. But nobody has time. You can see a lot of people left because they did not have time, right? So even if we say that you should regulate your emotions, is it that easy? Also, see, we people say that this generation is very lucky and they have less struggles. I would say it's not the case. I would say this generation has more struggles. This generation needs to have multiple things. You are not just you. Because if you are not the best, you will be replaced by another best. You need to be the best. And sir, you talked about that 1 lakh salary wala thing. So I don't think it's the worry is about earning 1 lakh a month or 1 lakh a day. The worry is whether you can earn 1 lakh, because there are 1 lakh people in front of you and you have to cross them to earn that 1 lakh. So I think people are worrying about that more. I'm sorry, I'll have to refer to my notes because there was one more thing. Yes, we are constantly running on a clock, right? Even this conference is scheduled. We are always on a clock and we are on a race. And the problem is there a solution? if I think about a solution, it seems very utopic to me, honestly, because even if I would regulate myself, the world won't. And I'm actively a participant of this reality. I'm actively perceiving whatever the world is showing me. It's not like I can shield myself from the outer reality. The world is there, the world exists. I need to earn, I need to have food in my stomach, right? I can take less salary and I can survive, but everything, the cost is increasing. We are in a consumeristic society. This is a capitalistic world. So even if I'll go into the mountains, the world won't let me go into the mountains because I'm just lazy, I'm just running away now. Why can't you face your struggles? So even if you talk about emotional regulation, when should I regulate them? Do I have time for that? Is a question I had constantly in mind, because I understand how to regulate. I don't understand when to regulate, because even after today, I'll go home, I'll have to study. Then I'll have to prepare for the next semester. Then I'll have to prepare for my jobs. Then I have to prepare for being the best, because there are very best people in this world. And it is bound to feel inferior in a world which only claps for the superior. So how can you ask me to regulate myself if the world doesn't let me? How can you ask me to just think about myself if the world is actively building me? And by that, I'll conclude. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Mansi. It is a fitting end to this conference, because I think this panel, I beseech Venerable Geshe-la that the next conference begins with the student panel, because you have brought up, firstly, this hustle culture has taught you time management. I think in the day, all the oldies were a little bit relaxed and slow. Everybody has gone without a single timekeeping. And then you have brought up so many questions. And so these questions about structural issues, engaging with things. And I have to say that the pressures that the coming generations are facing, which, as you say, is based in conventional reality, we cannot escape from them. So I would say, Geshe-la, I don't have the guts to attempt to answer, or, but it's just fascinating what you all have brought up. And I also feel that, I think when His Holiness the Dalai Lama has introduced, C-learning and tried to have emphasis on education across being adopted in all colleges, schools, as you mentioned, Dechin, the thing is that when I look at the younger generation, being a teacher, when you're sitting in a drawing room in Delhi, people will say the younger generation, oh, they are like this, they quit jobs, they are moving here to there to there. Then when you interact with them, you are full of energy, of inspiration. And so I think in a way, your generation may have a new set of challenges because you are all equipped to deal with it. Today's panel has been absolutely amazing. And I'm not saying that because I'm sharing it, but I didn't expect, I was thinking I needed a black coffee, but you've all woken me up. So thank you so much to all of you. Big round of applause.
Hello. I think this session is the most captivating one. So with this, we have come to the end of today's closing session. Before we conclude, I would like to thank our chairperson, Professor Kaveri Gilla, for sharing this session beautifully. And I also would like to thank all our panelists here for your very informative and insightful take on today's topic. So thank you once again. And now I would like to request Geshe-doji Damdula to kindly offer a kadak and souvenirs to our distinguished chairperson and panelist.
Before I honor the chairperson and all the panelists, the students here, what I'd like to share is that, as all of you agree with me, that this discussion is extremely inspiring, and really sharing their thoughts. And they're all, most of the speakers, what we did, they were all prepared the minimum the last 1 week or 1 month, and for them it's like a extempore, and it's amazing. I really appreciate it. And from the questions coming from the students, I can see that there are many burning questions in the mind. And given that you already know who the speakers are, and I would highly suggest that you communicate with the speakers. If you don't get the emails, feel free to write to Tibet House, and our young staff who are extremely competent. They will be happy to provide you with the email addresses, and then you communicate with them with your questions. And I would also suggest that look for the multi-dimension, not only one-sided answer. Try to get answer from the psychologists, psychiatrists, and the Buddhist philosophers, or any the people who came here. You can get answers from the different the speakers and the resource persons. That they're very helpful, and I can see that there are many burning questions there, and I really appreciate it. And and one thing, this is Tibet House. I'm so proud of Tibet House. It's like empowering the women. I was expecting minimum 4, 5, 6 psychologists, male, and all are very dynamic ladies. I really appreciate. Thank you.
First, our chairperson, Professor Kaveri Gill. Miss Aditi Kaushik. Miss Tenzin Soki. Miss Arya Malik. Please give them a big round of applause. Miss Tenzin Udon. Miss Simran Mili. Miss Sarin Dicky. Miss Conga Dechin. Miss Mansi. Miss Bhavya Bhardwaj. Thank you, Gishila.
Okay, some of you may be wondering as to what this chart is like. This is actually in fact, we would say that if you study this well, what is inside, this is one dimension of the response to many of the questions that came up today. And for this, of course, you need to study that. And this is like a whole 1-year program, which Tibet House conducts every year. And one of the Singaporean Indian ladies, she summarized all these the teachings, the psychology, philosophy, how to deal with the emotions. They're all here in this chart. And she did this. She summarized it, and she brought this. This is like a summary chart of 1-year program. of dealing with emotions and all these things. So if possible, so you see that this is a chart. This chart. And if you're interested to really know more about this, we'd be happy to provide you the materials. And this is actually whole 1 year program. And all these questions which we ask, the answers are here, but it doesn't mean that this is the only answer. As I said earlier, let us not confine ourselves to only one direction. Let's be somebody to be exposed to the openness, exposed to all the traditions, Western psychology, psychiatrists, the psychiatry, and then the philosophy, different, the traditional psychological presentations, be exposed to all. And from there, you will see that whatever is best for you. And also you can have the synchrony of all these different points of view. That'd be wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gisela. As we come to the close of this remarkable one-day conference, on behalf of Tibet House, New Delhi, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all our esteemed speakers and chairperson for accepting our invitation and for sharing your insightful presentation with us. I'm quite sure that many of us will get inspired and motivated after today's conference. I also want to extend my deepest gratitude to our Geshe-la for always being a guiding star for us. Your wisdom, support, and unwavering belief in us has always ignited the flames of inspiration within our hearts. You have taught us not only to navigate through difficulties, but to embrace them as opportunities for growth and learning. You have shown us that true leadership is not just about leading from the front, but also about lifting others up and helping them shine. Thank you for being the guiding force in our life, Gisela. I also would like to thank all my dear Tibet House colleagues for their remarkable dedication and enthusiasm into putting all this together. Their tireless efforts have been instrumental in ensuring the success of this event. In particular, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation to our program coordinators, Domala and Kungala, and our secretary, Kunjabla, for their pivotal roles in making this conference a resounding success. I also like to express my heartfelt gratitude, especially to our dedicated IT teams, Siringla, our video cameraman, Sidenla, who's managing the live stream right now, and Rabyangla, our photographer, who always work tirelessly behind the scenes. Their hard work shines through the program booklet that we have in our hand, these program booklets. Not only that, the brochures, the flyers, the posters, and the backdrop, all made by our IT teams. So I really appreciate them, and I want to sincerely thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I also want to thank our accountant Ashokji's daughter, Miss Sakshila, for helping out in today's registration desk. Thank you, Sakshila. Last but not least, on behalf of Tibet House New Delhi, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to each and every one of you. Your presence, engagement, and contributions have made this event a successful one. Thank you once again for being a part of this extraordinary day, and we look forward to seeing you all again in our future events. Thank you so much. Happy weekend.